"I'll save your family," he said, "but you'll have to be my wife." For a moment, Solenne Carter couldn't breathe. The billionaire everyone feared was offering to buy her future. Her father's company, the only legacy her family had left, was dying. 50 families stood to lose their homes, and all she had to do was say yes. But how do you say yes when the price is your freedom? They call her a strong black woman, the one who endures, the one who fixes everything. But that night, strength felt like a curse, and love an impossible luxury. Let her story remind you, love can find us, even in the most impossible places. Morning light slipped through the blinds, falling across stacks of unpaid invoices. Solenne Carter sat at her father's desk, staring at columns of red ink that bled across the screen. Every number screamed failure. Carter Design Group, once the pride of Atlanta's skyline, was weeks away from collapse. Projects were frozen, clients disappeared, and her father, Calvin Carter, too proud to ask for mercy, could no longer hide the tremor in his hands. Outside, the city kept shining. Inside, the air smelled of paper, medicine, and quiet panic. Solenne ran her fingers over the edge of an old blueprint signed by her grandfather. She could almost hear his voice telling her that architecture was about saving lives through design. Now, she could barely save the people who built those dreams with her. 50 families waited for her decision. Rent, health insurance, children's tuition. It all sat in her inbox like ghosts she couldn't face. Her phone buzzed again, another creditor. She silenced it, closed her eyes, and whispered, "There has to be a way." But in her heart, she already knew there wasn't. The cough came from the hallway before she heard his footsteps. Calvin Carter moved slower now, shoulders curved by time and failure. He placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "Solenne," he said, voice rough with fatigue. "I met with someone today, Darius Holt." The name hung heavy between them. Everyone in Atlanta's construction world knew it. Ambitious, ruthless, untouchable. Solenne turned, eyes searching her father's. "You met him? Why?" "He has resources," Calvin replied. "He could clear our debts, secure every job. He wants a partnership." He hesitated, the next words breaking like glass. "Through you." Her breath caught. "You mean marriage?" He nodded once, ashamed. "I'm sorry, baby. I can't lose what your grandfather built. I can't lose them." The silence afterward felt like centuries. Solenne looked at his shaking hands, the same hands that once guided hers over blueprints. He had taught her about foundations, about strength. Now both were crumbling. She pressed her palm against his, whispering, "You shouldn't have to choose this." But he already had. 2 days later, glass towers mirrored a gray Atlanta sky. Solenne stepped into the top floor of Holt Urban Developments, the air cool, metallic, controlled. Darius Holt stood by the window, a dark figure against the light. "Ms. Carter," he greeted, his tone precise, measured. "Your father explained your situation." She met his gaze, steady, calm, hiding the quake beneath. He continued, "I'll settle every debt, preserve every job. In return, you'll become my wife. A marriage in name, not sentiment." Solenne felt the words strike like thunder. Marriage as currency. Love reduced to leverage. "What do you get?" she asked quietly. "Stability. Optics. A partner who understands design and discretion." He paused, eyes narrowing. "Do we have an understanding?" Rain began to fall beyond the glass, thin lines tracing down the window. Inside, silence pressed harder than the storm. Solenne gathered her purse, forcing her voice to stay even. "I'll think about it." As she stepped into the rain-slick street, the wind caught her hair, cold and sharp. She didn't notice the tears until they mixed with the storm. His words followed her into the storm, each syllable heavier than the rain. Rain swallowed the city. Solenne stepped out of the glass tower, her heels striking water that pooled on the curb. Thunder rolled like the sound inside her chest. She crossed the street without looking, headlights flashing past her. Money, pride, her family's name, each collided in her mind like cars at an intersection. Darius's words echoed above the rain. A marriage in name, not sentiment. Her jaw tightened. Was this what survival looked like? Dignity traded for security? The wind tore at her umbrella, snapping the metal ribs. She let it fall, walking bareheaded through the storm. Cold water blurred her vision, but she didn't care. Maybe she wanted the world to drown the noise in her head. By the time she reached her car, her clothes clung to her skin. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. For the first time, she admitted it. She had lost control, and nothing terrified her more than that. The rain didn't stop. It softened into a steady whisper against the windows. Solenne sat on the floor beside her father's study, knees drawn close. From the next room came the sound of his cough, rough, uneven, mortal. She opened her laptop again. Numbers. Dead ends. Silence. No miracle waiting in her inbox. On the desk, a framed photo. Her father, younger, proud, holding her first blueprint. The girl in that picture had believed she could build anything. Now she could only build a wall around her fear. Solenne reached for her phone. Her thumb hovered over Darius Holt's number. Her pulse thudded once, twice. She thought of the employees who trusted her name, of children whose parents would lose their paychecks, of a legacy disappearing into bankruptcy court. Her eyes closed. The rain and her heartbeat merged. She pressed the call. When his voice answered, calm, waiting, she whispered, "I'll do it." And in that moment, something inside her broke, and something else began. The next afternoon, the conference room smelled of paper and ink. 2 lawyers waited at a polished table, documents stacked like walls. Darius sat across from her, suit immaculate, expression unreadable. "Standard clauses," he said. "Financial coverage, confidentiality." Solenne read each page through the words blurred together. The weight of her pen felt heavier than her hand. When she signed the final line, a hush settled. A deal sealed, a life exchanged. Darius nodded once. "You'll have everything you need," he said. His tone was even, almost gentle, but distant, as if compassion itself were a luxury. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and extended a file toward his attorney. Their eyes met briefly. In his, she saw not cruelty but calculation. Order, control, safety bought at any cost. He didn't touch her hand, didn't offer congratulations. Only the faint echo of authority remained as he walked away. Solenne sat motionless, watching the ink dry beside her name. For the first time she realized this wasn't just a contract. It was the blueprint of her new captivity. Days blurred into fittings, schedules, and silence, until the wedding arrived. The dress came in a box wrapped with silver tissue. When Solenne lifted it, the silk slipped through her fingers like water. It was beautiful, too beautiful for a marriage born from debt. Her mother, Evelyn, stood behind her, holding a small handkerchief. "You look like your grandmother," she whispered, voice trembling. Solenne met her eyes in the mirror. "This isn't what I dreamed, Mama." Evelyn smiled sadly. "Dreams change, baby. Sometimes love starts where fear begins." Her hands adjusted the veil, careful, tender. The scent of her perfume, lavender and rain, filled the quiet room. Outside, guests would see only elegance. They would never know the price of this gown or the weight of each stitch. Solenne's reflection looked calm, but inside she was breaking open. When the seamstress asked if she needed alterations, she shook her head. "No, it fits," she said softly. It fit too perfectly, like a decision she could never undo. 2 nights before the ceremony, Darius called. His tone was even. "Dinner tomorrow. My driver will pick you up at 7. Solenne agreed before she could ask why. The next evening, the restaurant glowed with warm light, crystal and silver waiting. He stood when she arrived. "Thank you for coming," he said. She nodded, unsure how to respond to politeness from the man who had bought her future. The waiter poured wine. Conversation began with small talk, then paused. Darius leaned forward slightly. "What do you want from life, Solenne?" The question disarmed her. She expected contracts, not curiosity. "I want to build something that lasts," she said after a moment. "Something that gives back more than it takes." He listened without interrupting. For the first time, she saw no arrogance in his eyes, only interest. It was disquieting, dangerous. Dinner stretched longer than she expected. They spoke of cities, architecture, and mistakes. Darius shared a story about his first failed project, the one that almost ruined him. He taught himself to rebuild, Solenne thought. He doesn't just construct buildings, he rebuilds himself. He watched her carefully. "Most people don't look at the world the way you do." "Maybe that's why I'm always tired," she said, half smiling. A rare thing happened then. He laughed. It was quiet, rough, unpolished, human. When they parted, he walked her to the door. Rain glimmered again on the pavement, softer this time. "Good night, Mrs. Carter-to-be," he said. She hesitated, then answered, "Good night, Darius." As his car pulled away, she caught her reflection in the window. The fear in her eyes was still there, but beneath it, something new flickered. Curiosity. The memory of that dinner stayed with her, quiet and confusing as the wedding day approached. The chapel was small, filled with candlelight and quiet. Solenne's dress whispered against the marble floor as she walked down the aisle. Her father's arm trembled beside her. Darius stood waiting, composed as always, yet his eyes softened when he saw her. There were no reporters, no grandeur, just family, silence, and the sound of their breaths. The minister's voice drifted like smoke. When he asked for their vows, Solenne's hands shook, but her voice didn't. "I promise to honor what we build together," Darius replied, "and I promise to protect it." Simple words, but something moved between them, something real. When the moment came, he leaned in for the ceremonial kiss. It was meant to be polite, a gesture for witnesses, but when their lips met, warmth replaced duty. The room vanished. Time slowed. When they parted, her heart was still racing. No one clapped right away. They just stared at the two of them, unsure whether they had witnessed a promise or the start of something else. Rain followed them to the airport. By the time the plane lifted above Atlanta, the city lights blurred beneath the storm. Darius sat beside her, silent. He wasn't reading, wasn't working, just watching the clouds. The car, waiting in Georgia, took them along a narrow coastal road. Pine trees bent in the wind, and somewhere beyond them the sea roared. The house appeared suddenly, a quiet, modern place of glass and wood built into the cliff. Inside, the air smelled of salt and cedar. No staff, no noise, just the sound of waves against stone. Solenne stood near the window, feeling the stillness around her. For the first time in weeks, there was no phone ringing, no deadlines, no eyes watching. Darius set down their bags. "This week is yours," he said simply. She nodded, unsure what that meant. But the calm felt heavier than fear, almost like peace. Morning light touched the edge of the ocean. Darius made coffee, quietly. He didn't ask how she slept. They spent the day walking along the beach, shoes in hand, the tide brushing their feet. He told her stories of Detroit, how he used to draw buildings on grocery paper, how his mother worked double shifts, how his first bid failed because no one believed a young black man could own a construction firm. His words came slowly, like he was unlearning silence. Solenne listened without interrupting. The wind tangled her hair, and something loosened in her chest. She saw not the billionaire from headlines, but a boy who had once built towers out of broken things. When they returned to the house, he asked quietly, "Did I talk too much?" She smiled. "No, you finally sound human." He looked at her then, really looked, and the air between them shifted. The sky darkened early. Candles flickered in the living room, their light soft against the walls. They sat close, talking about nothing and everything. At some point, the space between their words disappeared. Darius's voice dropped, quiet but certain. "We can take it slow, or not at all." Solenne met his eyes, her heart thudding once, twice. There was no command in his tone, only choice. She moved closer. The room breathed with them. Every fear, every wall built from pride began to fall. When he touched her face, it wasn't hunger but reverence. The world shrank to heartbeat and breath, to the warmth of skin against skin, to the strange peace found in surrender. Outside, the ocean rose and broke against the cliff, its rhythm echoing the one inside them. The storm had already begun. Sunlight spilled across the sheets, pale and clean. Solenne woke to the sound of waves and the faint smell of coffee. For a second, she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw the note on the nightstand. "Good morning, wife." The words made her laugh, soft and uncertain. She wrapped herself in a robe and stepped onto the terrace. The sea stretched endless, blue and gold. Darius sat at the table, reading the paper, a second mug waiting for her. When he looked up, he smiled. Not the sharp smile of control, but something quieter. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Better than I have in a long time." They ate in silence, comfortable, almost tender. The world outside still moved fast, but here, time walked slower. For the first time since signing her name, Solenne Carter felt like herself again. The days at the coast blurred softly, one into another. They walked barefoot along the shore, waves curling around their ankles. The air smelled of salt and wet earth. They spoke about buildings, cities, and dreams. He showed her sketches of green rooftops and recycled glass towers. She talked about restoring forgotten neighborhoods instead of erasing them. Their ideas overlapped almost seamlessly. When she laughed, he found himself listening instead of planning his next line. When he spoke, she caught glimpses of the man behind the control. At night, they worked side by side at the long wooden table. 2 laptops, 2 cups of coffee, silence that felt companionable. Sometimes their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. The peace was fragile but real, a calm so rare that both were afraid to name it. On the last evening, they watched the sun sink behind the water. He said quietly, "I could stay like this." She smiled. "You'd get bored." "Maybe," he answered, "but not of you." The night before they left, the house felt too still. Darius stood by the window, phone in hand, unread messages lighting the screen. He turned it off and faced her. "I think I'm falling for you." The words landed between them, soft but unstoppable. Solenne froze, unsure how to breathe. She had built walls of duty, logic, survival. Now, one simple sentence cracked them open. He took a step closer, but didn't touch her. "I know it wasn't supposed to be this, but I can't keep pretending it's only business." Tears gathered before she could stop them. She didn't speak, only nodded, small, trembling. Her silence said everything. He reached for her hand, his thumb brushing her ring. The room held its breath. Outside, the sea whispered against the glass. For the first time, love didn't feel like surrender. It felt like truth. Morning came too quickly, carrying them back to everything they'd left undone. The return flight was quiet. The city reappeared beneath them, glittering and cold. Darius's penthouse stretched high above Atlanta. Glass, marble, precision. Solenne walked through it slowly. Everything was perfect, untouched, lifeless. "This doesn't feel like home," she said. Darius turned, puzzled. "You can change anything you want. It's not about furniture." He frowned, then checked his phone. Calls, meetings, numbers. The distance that the ocean had softened returned like gravity. That night, she lay awake in the wide bed. His side was warm but empty. She stared at the ceiling and realized the truth. Happiness was easy when the world disappeared. Now, reality was back, and it didn't know her name. Morning light filtered through the glass walls. The elevator doors opened before either of them spoke. A woman stepped out, tall, elegant, confident. "Naomi," Darius said, tension slipping into his tone. "My sister." Naomi's smile was bright and cold. "So, this is the famous wife." Her eyes scanned Solenne from head to toe. "You move quickly, brother." Solenne extended a hand. "Nice to meet you." Naomi ignored it. "Do you ever wonder why people marry so fast? Usually, it's money." The words hit like a slap. Darius's jaw tightened. "That's enough." Naomi shrugged. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." She turned to Solenne, voice sharp. "When you leave, and you will, don't take him for everything." The silence afterward was unbearable. Naomi left her perfume behind, like smoke after fire. Solenne stood still, heart pounding, humiliation burning under her skin. When the door closed, Solenne finally spoke. "I didn't marry you for money." Her voice was steady, though her chest ached. "I married for responsibility, for people who depend on me." Darius tried to reach for her arm. "Solenne, don't let her—" She stepped back. "She said what they all think, didn't she?" "No," he said quickly. But the hesitation in his eyes cut deeper than any insult. She turned toward the elevator, grabbing her coat. Maybe this was never about love. Maybe it was just convenient. "Don't go," he said. "We can fix this." She shook her head. "You can't fix trust with money, Darius." Tears blurred her vision as the elevator doors slid shut. For the first time since their deal began, Solenne didn't feel bought or rescued. She felt free and broken. The elevator descended slowly, the hum of machinery filling the silence. Solenne wiped at her cheeks, refusing to cry again. Her phone buzzed in her hand. His name lit the screen. A message. "Don't leave. We'll handle this together." She stared at the words, her reflection fractured in the mirrored wall. Could she trust him? Or was this another promise spoken out of guilt? The floor numbers glowed, 18, 12, 9. Her heart beat faster with every blink. She remembered his voice at the coast, the way he'd said, "I'm falling for you." She remembered Naomi's eyes, sharp and cruel. Two worlds pulling her in opposite directions. The elevator stopped at the lobby. The doors opened. Rain shimmered beyond the glass doors, city lights blurred through it. Solenne took one step forward, then stopped. The phone buzzed again. One more message. "Please, come back." She turned around and pressed the button to go up. Her reflection looked different now, still trembling, but stronger. When the elevator doors opened again, the penthouse was silent. Naomi was gone. Only Darius remained, standing by the window, his tie loosened, his eyes steady. She hesitated, unsure what to say. He spoke first. "I told her to leave," he said quietly. "I told my parents, too. They know everything now, and if they can't respect you, they won't see me again." Solenne froze. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said. "You are my family now." The words cut through the distance like light. For the first time there was no wall between them, only truth. He walked toward her, slow, careful, not reaching until she nodded. When his hands touched her shoulders, the weight she'd carried for weeks began to lift. Outside, the storm eased, the city lights soft and golden. Inside, she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. 2 days later, Darius stood in his parents' living room. The tension was thick. Portraits of the Holt family watched from the walls. His mother spoke first. "You embarrassed us, Darius. You married a woman for business." He didn't flinch. "I did, but I stayed because of love." His father frowned. "You expect us to believe that?" "I don't need you to believe it. I just need you to see her the way I do." He turned his phone toward them. A photo of Solenne at the project site, helmet on, smiling despite the rain. "She works harder than anyone I've met. She saved more than a company. She saved me." Silence. Then his mother sighed, weary but moved. "If she makes you happy, that's enough." Later, he called Solenne. "It's done," he said simply. "What's done?" They know the truth, and they didn't walk away. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, "Thank you for choosing honesty." Evening fell quiet again. Solenne sat by the window, sketchbook on her knees, pencil still. Rainlight shimmered through the glass, washing the city in silver. Behind her, footsteps. Darius approached, stopping just close enough for his shadow to touch her. She didn't look up until she felt his hand on her shoulder. "I was scared, too," he said. She turned, eyes softening. "Of what?" "Of losing you. Of not deserving what we found." Her lips curved slightly. "Fear means it matters," she said. He nodded, then leaned down, pressing his forehead against hers. For a moment, they didn't need words, just breath, warmth, quiet understanding. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered, not as pain, but as proof they had survived it together. Months later, a new sign gleamed across the front of a renovated office downtown: Holt Carter Sustainable Design. Inside, sunlight spilled across open floors and plants by the windows. Architects moved between models and sketches, laughter replacing old tension. Solenne stood beside Darius, reviewing plans for their first joint project, an affordable eco-housing complex built for families displaced by the last recession. The company's motto hung on the wall: rebuild, renew, rise. She traced the words with her eyes, feeling their truth. They had rebuilt more than walls. They had renewed what was broken in both of them, and they had risen, not through power, but through love. Darius looked at her, smiling softly. "This," he said, "is the real legacy." Solenne took his hand. "Yes," she whispered, "ours." Their success drew attention, and attention never came without cost. It started with one article. Then came 3 more. "Marriage of Convenience," the headlines read. Photos of Solenne and Darius filled every business page, every lifestyle column. Questions followed her to every meeting. Was she a strategist or a social climber? Had she married for love or for survival? Cameras waited outside their building. When she stepped out, flashes burst like lightning. Reporters shouted her name, voices cutting through the noise. Darius walked beside her, silent, composed. At the steps of their office, he stopped and took her hand. The crowd hushed. "She's my wife," he said firmly. "My partner, my equal. Everything we built together." He didn't let go of her hand even when they turned away from the cameras. And for the first time, Solenne didn't feel exposed. She felt seen. That night, the news ran the photo. His hand over hers, both of them smiling, unguarded. No headline could rewrite that truth. Later, in the quiet of their office, Darius closed a folder and looked at her. "When I met you," he said slowly, "I thought I was buying safety." She waited, heart still. He continued, "But I found peace." For a long time, neither spoke. The hum of the city drifted through the glass walls. Solenne reached across the table, her fingers finding his. "And I found myself," she said. Something shifted in the air, a stillness that felt like completion, not silence. Every mistake, every compromise, every heartbreak had led them here to understanding. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual noise. But in that small room, 2 people who began as strangers finally belonged to their own story. Months passed. The first Holt Carter project opened to the public. Families moved into homes filled with light and recycled air. Children played on rooftops covered in green. Investors called it innovation. Solenne called it redemption. At sunset, she stood beside Darius on the rooftop terrace of their building. Below them, Atlanta shimmered like a river of gold. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's yours," he replied. "No," she smiled, turning to him. "It's ours." The city stretched before them, chaotic, alive, imperfect. And yet for once, it felt at peace. They didn't talk about profits or deadlines. They just watched the lights come on, one by one, like small promises kept. The evening wind carried the scent of rain. They stood close, her head resting against his chest. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "The deal was to save your family," he said, "but you saved me." She looked up, eyes glistening in the fading light. "Maybe we both needed saving," she whispered. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. For a moment, time folded. The past, the contract, the storm, everything that once felt heavy now light as air. Below them, the city continued its hum, but the sound felt distant, harmless. Their story had come full circle. From transaction to tenderness, from survival to love. Sometimes love doesn't begin with a spark. It begins with a bargain. with fear, with two people choosing duty over desire. But love has its own way of rewriting what we believe. What started as an exchange became a promise. What began as survival became faith. Solenne once thought she was selling her freedom. Darius thought he was buying control. Instead, they found something neither could name. Peace built from truth and love shaped by choice, not chance. Because love isn't always gentle. It doesn't always arrive wrapped in perfection. Sometimes it walks through storms, holds its breath in silence, and stays anyway. If this story made you remember the power of choosing love, share it with someone who still believes that healing is possible. Follow the journey and keep believing that love, in any form, can heal what the world once broke.